Hey, it's JK. You know, Dark Souls has a lot of cool weapons. Quick curve swords, Chad greatswords, giant hammers, ranged spears, and many more. But there's also some weapon classes which are generally considered to be less than optimal and wouldn't be most people's first choice to use when playing the game. But this of course means they're perfect for challenge runs. As the resident YouTube guy who likes to beat these games 3 times in a row, it seemed logical for me to do one of my classic runs, but each cycle I'll be restricted to only using one of these weapon types. So for New Game, it will be shields only, for New Game Plus, it will be gauntlets only, and for New Game Plus Plus, it will be whips only. Let's dive right in and see what happens. Bad Derp is ready to wield some bad weapons. Looking at his face, let me know in the comments what you'd say if this guy invited you out for dinner. Would you accept his offer? We start as the Knight class. For the shield it starts with, and of course we choose the Master Key. We start off just like the morning after my stag party, in a prison cell with little memory of how we got here. But one thing you might have memory of is this video's sponsor. Left feeling empty since the Game of Thrones TV series ended? Well, fear not, because Game of Thrones Legends is here. An RPG for mobile with team-based PvE and PvP, featuring iconic characters from the show. You can pair up characters like Jon Snow and Rhaenyra Targaryen to make an unstoppable team to snowplow through the opposition, and you can equip them with iconic weapons. The battles take a puzzle format, so strategic use of weapons, special abilities, and also upgrading your characters in the right way will be essential to progress. Every choice affects your destiny. There's also a number of locations from the show, from the heart of Westeros to the icy north and the fiery south, all portrayed with some visuals that'll make you feel right at home, or should I say, right at throne. The game is available right now, so go and claim that throne for yourself. Download Game of Thrones Legends by clicking the link in the description or scan the QR code and get 50 gold, 3,000 food, and a daily summon token to start your journey. We start off with this big old clunky armor, but I ditch it instantly because I want to feel the breeze against my skin. We run past the Asylum Demon and grab our first weapon for the shield cycle, the Tower Kite Shield. Shields in Dark Souls are usually used for blocking and parrying, but holding them in your right hand does allow you to attack with them like a normal weapon. The damage is not great, and the range is pretty poor, but I guess that's to be expected. We pick up the Estus Flask and the key that are just lying around in this room, and then try out two-handing the shield against this hollow. Two-handing does give us nearly double damage, but it's still quite low. Let's test it out properly against this member of the Asyluminati. So obviously you can't do a proper plunging attack with a shield in the same way you can't do backstabs or ripostes. The damage is, honestly, I've had a lot worse. But I actually think the shield is the best of the 3 weapon classes we'll be testing out in this video, and that's purely down to one great advantage of two-handing shields. We can hold L1 to block with it, and as most shields obviously have quite good damage resistances, this provides us with a nice extra way to stay alive. Even with low damage, this really increases our survivability, allowing us to block attacks and almost instantly counter with some hits to bring down this derriere demon in short order. Getting to Firelink is all I want to do. Thankfully Sheryl Crow shows us the way, as every day is a winding road. Hopefully we can go see Solaire soon and soak up the sun. Anyway, I choose not to level up here controversially. Instead, I run around and grab as many consumable souls as I can. You see, the shield only has D-scaling in strength, so realistically adding more points to strength won't do that much. It will actually be far more beneficial to make a beeline to our trusty blacksmith bro, buy Titanite and upgrade it. On the way, we grab the Grass Best shield for its stamina regeneration increase. I slowly smashed this crystal lizard, but it didn't drop any large Titanite or Titanite chunks, which was pretty unfortunate. We make it to our bearded butte, and we're able to buy enough Titanite to upgrade the Tower Kite shield to +4. In probably an unsurprising turn of events, the damage is still pretty trash. Granted, these enemies have better defenses than the early hollows, but still. I make this Knight Bearer hike himself off the edge, and then use the souls to buy 2 more Titanite to upgrade our shield to +5. I decided to have a go at the Belgarganacles to see what our damage is like, and yeah, still low. But the bigger issue is the range of the shield. There's times where I'm right next to him, but the attack misses. I decided to actually go try leveling up and getting more upgrades before attempting them again to see if I can squeeze out some more damage. This Spear Hollow was struggling to take his next career leap, so I gave him the push he needed. I then unlock the shortcut ladder beneath the bridge, go trigger the Red Kite Drake, and then use the classic easy soul farm method with him burning the guys on the bridge. After a few runs, I get myself up to 20 vitality, 20 endurance, and 20 strength, and head down to Lower Berg to take on the Capra demon. You might think this is an odd choice, but I need some things from the depths. The shield block works great for the dogs when they chase you up to this ledge. It takes a few hits to kill them, but once they're dead, the fight becomes a lot easier. You can just keep luring Capra to come up here and then do a sort of plunging attack onto him, but honestly this feels a bit cheesy, and I know you guys want to see me suffer it out bashing this guy with a shield. We can actually stagger the Capra with 3 to 4 hits in rapid succession, and the old circle around him while blocking strategy works great. The only hairy moment was when I got a little greedy and was punished, but other than that, my pragmatic approach worked well, and he soon dies. We can now get into the depths thanks to the key he drops, and we grab the large Andre which we can give to Ember later. There is actually something even more important we need to get from here though. At the depths bonfire, I restore my humanity, and then we pop some more to give ourselves some liquid humanity, improving our item discovery. The reason we need this is we're going to kill the invading knight William Shatner, who has a chance to drop what we need. And lo and behold, he does indeed drop it, the spiked shield. If he didn't drop it here, we wouldn't have a chance to get it until later, and we definitely wanted this. It has better damage, better scaling, and bleed as well. It scales in dexterity mostly, so we put some points in there, and then upgrade it to +4. Good thing we bought the weaponsmith box earlier. As we're here, we might as well take out the gaping dragon, so we quickly beat down the Jackie Channeler before heading in there. Even hitting the head doesn't do that much damage, but at least its moveset is easy enough to avoid. Interestingly, the wiki claims that it can be bled, but I hit this thing a lot of times in pretty quick succession and never got a single bleed across the entire 5-minute fight. Regardless though, we smack him in the mouth and rear enough times to give him a gape worm, and we shut his mouth shortly after. Let's get some more points in dex to boost our damage. This shield is going to carry us for a bit. I now return to Ember to give him the large Andre, even though I have no large Titanite currently. I upgrade the spike shield to +5 while I'm here, and prepare to try the belligerence once again. Okay, now that's some decent damage. Plus, 2 hits in rapid succession get the stagger. With this upgrade, I easily get the first one down before the second one joins. I don't think I got a bleed here, but honestly it doesn't matter. We smack the second in his underbelly a few times and down he goes. The first ding-a-ling is ringed. I really want to see some bleed though, but thankfully there is a boss who is perfect for this. After having a quick existential crisis, we find ourselves back in the asylum to take on Demon Astrea. The damage per hit is pretty dire, especially given the Stray's large health, but he is super weak to bleed, which gets procced every 2 to 3 hits, taking off a nice chunk of his HP. After 2 minutes of strafing around him and poking him with our shield, he goes down. We get a Titanite slab from him, and we also grab the doll while we're here. Just because I want to keep everyone guessing, we're actually going to go to the catacombs next. There is actually something I want to get here, and I'd rather get it out of the way early. I make my way down. The only thing of note was this necromancer coming out onto the bridge away from the skeletons, allowing me to easily beat him this time. Thanks, mate. We drop down to see everyone's favourite skeleton blacksmith, Vamos. Can you guess why we're here yet? Well, there's another shield down here we can get, but most people don't tend to get this in shield only runs because honestly it's a bit of a pain. It's dropped by the Bone Wheel skeletons, who only have a 2% chance to drop it, and they're not the easiest to kill using only a shield. I killed so many of them that I probably should be called a Sear Wheel killer, but eventually my patience is rewarded and we get the Bone Wheel shield. I have never used this before, and honestly I'm kind of excited. Before we upgrade that though, let's sort out Pinwheel while we're here. While we do this, let me tell ya, Pinwheel actually took up necromancy after he couldn't go to his school prom. You see, he had no body to go with. Yay, Rite of Kindling. We upgrade the Bone Wheel shield to +5 at the skeleton blacksmith, and then we channel his power as we vamos out of here back up through the catacombs. Phew, that was close. Back in Firelink, we attach our special boot-shaped shield to our foot and use it to push Lautrec off the edge, rewarding us with the Ring of Favour and Protection. Out of one dark hellhole and into another, it's time to take it down to Blighty Town. With a sweet plunge, we get our Firekeeper soul, and then we get the bonfire activated before taking on Quelaag. So this was another situation like the Gaping Dragon, aka why you should not trust the wikis. The wiki claimed that Quelaag is vulnerable to bleed, but again, I hit her a lot here and never got a single bleed. The only thing I can think is maybe you have to hit it in the human body to proc it, which obviously we have no way of doing. Damage is pretty low, but honestly the shield puts in work. A great strategy usually is attacking her on the side, as there's some spots you can almost avoid damage entirely, apart from the AoE explosion of course. But at least in New Game, we can actually just block the explosion with our shield. We still take some damage as the spike shield doesn't have 100% block, but it's way better than the damage we'd take normally and allows us to stay close. With a few more hits, we're able to finish off Winona's spider. Killing her with a shield was odd for sure, but I've seen stranger things. Bell number 2 is rung, and this giant opens the door to the funhouse. This area is a sentimental favourite amongst Soul fans. I grab the Ring of Steel protection here, introduce Snaky Jake to our spiked pancake, and then unlock the bonfire at the top. The Crestfallen Merchant is here, who is the first vendor to sell infinite large Titanite shards, which is exactly what we need. By grabbing the cage key, we can get back down to Andre and upgrade both the spiked shield and the bone wheel shield to +10. I take out the Lemon Giant at the top of the fortress, and it's finally time to test out the bone wheel shield. And who better than the Iron Golem? The main appeal of this shield is the R2 attack, which spins the shield round in front of you, hitting 5 times. Just 3 of these is enough to get the Golem staggering, and then 2 more gets him to tumble. Let's see if we can get him to tumble off. What the hell happened there? He went from Iron Golem to Iron Man there, but good thing he hasn't mastered flight yet. Now, the damage probably didn't seem amazing from the bone wheel shield, but don't worry, we're going to get way more out of this, especially as we arrive in Anor Londo. I put some points into endurance here because I want to be able to light roll while wearing this pretty heavy shield, and maybe put some stronger armor on if needed. We take care of these Ian the Painting guards up on the rafters and comfortably handle the Silver Knight archer. It's crazy how careless this guy is. This is the guy we want to see, our guy the Giant Blacksmith. He can upgrade our weapons down the lightning infusion path, and that's exactly what we want to do with the bone wheel shield. Okay, so now the real test of the shield against the dynamic duo of the Godskin Ornstein and Godskin Smough. My initial ingenious plan was to kill Ornstein first as he resists lightning, but forgetting that Smough gets more lightning resistance in phase 2. Oops. But to be fair, this shield put in some good work. When using the R2, it counts as blocking, meaning we're both attacking and defending at the same time. 2 R2s actually staggers Ornstein as well, so bringing him down didn't take too much. As for Smough, after realizing my blunder with the lightning resistance, I switched to the spiked shield as he's pretty vulnerable to bleed, and just battered him with my Smough piercer until he bled out. This was actually a first try victory. I still don't feel like I got the best out of the bone wheeled shield yet, but we will. Oh, trust me, we will. Anyhow, I stick some more points into endurance, get the Lord Vessel, and head off to tackle some of the optional content. Despite using lightning itself, the Titanite demon doesn't appear to resist it all that much as our wheel blends him up nicely. One thing that is weak to lightning though is the Moonlight Butterfly. I mean, look at that. I nearly took this thing out in one landing but just missed out. That's the kind of damage I'm talking about. We quickly turn this bug into I can't believe it's not Butterfly. Next, we grab the Divine Artorias, give it to Ember, and buy the Crest of Andre from him with the souls we've gained. As we're in the area and we just bought the crest, we might as well take out Sif. The biggest challenge with using a weapon with short range here is missing our hits when we're in between the legs. Unfortunate that we can't diversify our attacks. Despite some misses though, we do actually manage to hit Doggo a few times and even block some of the sword swings. If you happen to get her while she's jumping, we get a bit of sweet instability damage, helping to knock the health bar down further until we claim victory along with the Covenant of Artorias Ring. It made sense to clear up any other business here in Darkroot Garden, so we turn Havel the Rock into Swivel the Rock, then saw off the Hydra heads and see off the Golem and say hi to Dusk before I inevitably slaughter her later. I pump endurance a bit more and then we're off to New Londo to make these enemies ride the roller coaster. We get the key to the seal and drain New Londo, meaning 2 things. First, we can farm the Dark Wraiths for Titanite chunks, and second, we can grab the very large Andre. With a bit of patience and farming, we can get the Lightning Bone Wheel Shield up to +15. With that done, I feel ready to don the heavy poised stone armor and take on the 4 kings. They start with a projectile which I can nicely block, and I do the same with the 2 AoEs the king decides to spam, although sadly I can't do the same with the grab that happens shortly after. Despite this pretty awful start to the fight, the R2 of the Bone Wheel Shield does a tasty near 600 damage to the kings, which is pretty damn good to be honest. Once we get rolling, the kings go down pretty quickly, we shred their health bar over and over. I'm legit impressed by this shield. A couple more rotations and the kings are abysstery. I realised at this point I never spoke to Frampt earlier, so Karth is here to greet us. He takes us to the Firelink altar, and we get the Lord Vessel placed so we can access the other 3 Lord Souls. We might as well finish off the other optional bosses first though, so let's go see Gwendolyn. Or should I say, Spindolin. Look at that damage. Bone Wheel Shield is OP. What a weapon. Upstairs is the entrance to the Painted World, so we might as well see this off as well. This dragon goes from undead to spun dead, and then Priscilla gets introduced to Bone Percent as we wheel her off to the afterlife. It's a real shame how annoying this wheel is to get. It's a really fun weapon to use. Also, the cutscene with me jumping with this strapped to my back is amazing. I look like I'm about to take flight. Okay, enough messing around. Let's get this cycle scene off. I head to Duke's archives to get the broken pendant, and then my first encounter with Seath ends in the worst way possible. God damn it. Why does it keep cursing you after you've already died? Luckily, the archives weren't too much issue, so we can get to the bonfire, warp away, and get some purging stones before heading down to Crystal Caves to take on Seath for real, not for play. Seath is pretty weak to lightning, so... He beseeched me to stop, but I showed no mercy, and I don't think we'll be seeing him again. Until the next cycle at least anyway. It's time to bring back the Tower Kite shield and make it divine. This is of course in preparation for our expedition down to Tomb of the Giants, and of course Gravelord Nito. My initial plan was to use the shield to permakill his skeleton bros, but it seems I've made a grave error, that being greatly overestimating the damage the shield would do. So I decided to switch tactics and just go in with the Bone Wheel shield, hoping that Nito would take care of the minions himself. Disaster struck when I got hit by his Toxic, and also I arrogantly went in with only 5 Estus. Oops. Thankfully, I did have Humanities equipped to my item slots, which absolutely saved me this fight. I can block his AoE, but I still take a considerable chunk of damage. Nito's body is also a weird shape, so sometimes it's a little difficult to actually hit him with my attack due to its short range. There were several close calls, and even at the end, I nearly died before Nito finished his death animation, only just managing to pop the Humanity in time. This one took quite a knee toll on me, that's for sure. Well, off to Lost Izalith we go. First, we discharge Ceaseless from the Izalith military, worm our way down to the bonfire, use our wheel to give this demon a bad case of Road Sage, and arrive at the Centipede demon. I gotta say, cutting off its tail with the wheel felt really satisfying, like I was slicing it off with a buzzsaw. Centipede demon was pretty angry about this, and made some pretty hurtful allegations against me, but I ground him down in return for the victory. This few seconds here is all I'm going to spend talking about this boss before we put it to bed. With the 4 Lord Souls gained, just the DLC remains, which of course means it's time for a fan favourite, Ian the Sanctuary Guard! Now, as to be expected, he resists lightning, but also he jumps away from our R2 attack, and we miss it a lot because it's too slow. I actually opted to switch to the spiked shield mid-fight because it was quicker and Ian is actually vulnerable to bleed. This made a world of difference, and there was a direct mantic correlation between switching to this shield and us landing more successful hits. With bleed proccing, it was only a matter of time before we landed the finishing blow. I feel like we might end up using the spike shield again in the DLC, so I dropped the Lord Vessels in the Lord's Soul and farmed the Knight at the start of Kiln of the First Flame for Titanite chunks as he's guaranteed to drop them. The spike shield is now at plus 14. For Artorias though, I decided to keep with the Bone Wheel shield just because I felt the increased stability would help to block his attacks. And I was right. Circling around him while blocking like an absolute turtle is actually quite a good strategy. Fighting him with Wheel, you might as well call me Knight Rider. 2 spins is also enough to get the stagger to stop his buffing animation, which is extremely beneficial. It only takes a few more spins to win after that. After feeling pretty cocky after doing so well against Artorias, the route down to Manus was only too happy to bring me down to earth. Speaking of Manus, given his high resistance to elements, it felt like the spike shield was the right call here. 1 spin of the Bone Wheel shield took off 264, but 1 hit from the spike shield was 164, costing way less stamina and leaving me less vulnerable to a potential 6-hit death combo from this frantic chihuahua. It was quite a slow fight. I was basically waiting for the slam attacks which I could roll into for a hit, or doing a running attack to his hand after the multi-hit combo. Getting close to him after he does the big ring of dark orbs in the second phase is also a great time for damage. I nearly screamed at the end, where after nearly 8 minutes of fighting I got caught by the bouncing dark orbs, but thankfully I survived just about and was barely able to get close to him as he did the ring attack for the final blow. We use our shield as crockery to serve Handrew Garfield a steaming hot plate of defeat. Also, Dusk met with an unfortunate accident. So, just Kalameet left. Our giant archer friend helps cure Kalameet's sore throat with a goth drop, and then the real fight begins. A lot of people might not know this, but Kalameet can actually be bled. It just has a bleed resistance so high that unless you manage to constantly do damage with a really fast bleed weapon, chances are you won't see a bleed proc, so of course I definitely didn't see one here. Our damage was the lowest of any of the DLC bosses, and often we missed because of the range of the shield and the sometimes awkward angles of his legs. That being said, I find there's a lot more opportunities to attack him than with Manus. At one point, I managed a crazy dodge of his charge despite being right between his legs. The end of this was feeling several kilometers away, but now it's within sight. Before heading to the final boss, we buy our starting weapon for the New Game Plus cycle, the Case Deuce, as well as one other thing that we need to do that might surprise you. Did you forget we never did the Taurus Demon? Oh wow, we nearly one-shot him. He tried to tore us apart, but of course we tore him apart with one attack. So on to Gwyn, who I decided to poise tank. You might instantly think shields only, so surely parry, right? Well, we can't riposte him anyway, so I felt like this was a better strategy, circling him with the spiked shield. He did get pretty angry at some points, and even here his damage and ability to break our guard is no joke. We can stagger him after a couple hits, which is nice, and I did get lucky with some weird jank. What the hell happened here? I also found by getting him on this slightly elevated area, several of his swings actually went right over my head, allowing me to send Gwynny the Pooh back to his honey hole. As feels appropriate following that, I lather myself in the honey and set myself on fire to begin cycle number 2. Just to mention, if you're enjoying the video, why not consider subscribing? There's more videos and fun times ahead, and many watching aren't subscribed at the moment. You'll get notified of any new content I drop if you're subscribed, and I promise I will continue to work hard to keep you entertained. I appreciate every single one of you watching. Thank you so much. Back in the asylum, we remove literally everything we're wearing and equip the +0 Case Deuce to start this run. In fact, I put one on each hand just for max fashion. These runs tend to have a tradition of me doing woeful damage to the Asylum Demon in New Game Plus, so let's see if that continues. I mean, okay, yeah, it's not great, but we are seeing yellow, so that's something. I actually went with strong attacks here as a combo of 2 of them was getting over 100 damage. Hell, even with 4 light attacks we can get over 100, which is pretty feasible to do given our fast attack speed. We continued our demoniacal assault until we finish him off, and we come out a winner in the fist encounter of this cycle. We progress through the asylum and punch our ticket out of here. We arrive in Firelink Shrine and take the usual route beneath to get to Andre, although this time the Crystal Lizard does actually drop some large Titanite. Andre gets our Case Deuce upgraded to +5, and this time I buy the rest of Cartorius right away. We're actually going to go into this area of Darkroot Garden and join the Forest Hunter Covenant right now. This unlocks Shiva of the East, who, after we speak to him here, moves to Blighttown in one of the more awkward merchant placements of the game. From here, we can buy our next Gauntlet type weapon, the Claw. By the way, did anyone else actually think this weapon type was called Fists, not Gauntlets? I only learned that on this very run, and even on the wiki they're called Fist weapons. Not like the wiki is a bastion of accurate information anyway, but still. So, the Claw is perhaps the best of this weapon type because it has a slightly longer reach and also has bleed, which is invaluable for certain bosses as we saw last cycle. We'll be using this for most of this run, there's not that many options anyway. We get the Claw upgraded to +5 and test it out against this Balder Knight. Damage is pretty low, but attacks are fast, so it somewhat compensates. I say somewhat because I suspect there's absolutely no way I'll be able to kill the first Bell Gargoyle before the second one spawns. And I was right. Also, I appear to get 2-shot by the Gargs now. Probably shouldn't have stopped leveling up Vitality during the last cycle. Remember the advice about how having high health when you have low damage is a good idea? Well, I should have followed that. Oh well. Our damage is considerably lower than with the shield, but we can still get bleed, so that's something. I really just need to take out one of the Gargs, and then I'll be a Bell to win. But finding openings where I'm not going to be punished by an insta-death flame breath isn't always the easiest. If you get one of those rare times where they both breathe fire, you're in business, and with just one Goyle remaining, he gargles on my bell and dies shortly after. With the first bell rung, we can... Oh my god! Wait, where did you go? Oh, well, never mind. We get the bridge shortcut unlocked, and then use my shoe fist technique to Lautrec this guy to get the fappity fap ring back. Now, in fairness, I could have made the Gargoyle fight easier by coming down to Lower Berg first and beating the Capra to go get the large Ember, but I like varying things up between cycles, even if it brings me more pain. So let me give you a quick recapra of this fight. Luckily, the Claw was fast enough to handle the dogs and can take them out in 3 hits. The damage per hit to Capra is pretty shocking. Worth noting, you can't two-hand Gauntlet weapons in this game for more damage. So we're relying on bleed, and also the fact that enough hits can still get us a stagger, both of which we can achieve by getting Capra to fall down from the ledge, leaving us with a nice big opening to lay the slashes in. I also discovered the rolling attack with the Claw, which is a bit weird because you actually do another roll before doing the attack. Not sure why the second roll is necessary, but anyhow, Capra is defeated. We get our prize from the depths and upgrade our Claw to +7 with the large Titanite the Crystal Lizard gave us earlier. Next, the Meat Cleaver Maiden shows us her mad dance skills, we kindle the bonfire and channel our anger in a positive direction. Remember how in the last cycle I said I never got a bleed on the Gaping Dragon? Well, here I'm using an even faster bleed weapon and hit it a huge amount of times, and again, no bleed. I did manage to cut the tail though after a huge amount of hits, so cool, I guess. There were some teething issues using these weapons, but I think I've moved past that and we efficiently slash up this dragon. He was living hand to mouth by the end of this one. I upgrade Vitality now as we know how important that's going to be here. I decided I would take the conventional route to Blighttown. This route sucks. I usually always go via Valley of Drakes just because it's much less aggro, but this time there's a very important item here. The Whip, our starter weapon for the next cycle. We mission down to the bonfire, and now it's time for Quelaag. I'm once again convinced that the wikis are lying about her being vulnerable to bleed, just look at all those hits. Also, in all the times I've fought her, I've never seen this attack before. That's what you call spicy twerking. Crazy how you can still see new things in these games after all this time. Well, no sign of any yellow damage in her health bar this fight. I think she must have gotten pretty Quelaag-ravated having me stuck in her side slashing away for 8 minutes. We slash, and slash some more until we defeat her and get the second bell rung. While we're here, we also defeat Ceaseless Fist Charge with our Dis weapon. Before moving to the now open Fortress of Fun, I took a little expedition to take on the Stray Leota. He's a good fella to be sure, but we still gotta bleed him out. It's actually insane how effective bleed is here. We get another Titanite slab and the dollar for beating him. Time for this fortress to make its presence known once again, although I find it hard to rescent an area with so many useful upgrade materials. You might be wondering why I don't just stock up on all the relevant Titanites before moving from one cycle to the next. Well, it's because I like to make things harder for myself for no reason. So after getting the Ring of Steel protection and upgrading the claws to +10, the Iron Golem sends me on my way. So our damage is obviously absolute trash, and of course this guy cannot be bled. But my question is, can we topple him? I put the Grass Crest Shield in my other hand here to improve stamina recovery and went to work. I felt if there was any way we might manage, it would require me getting my stamina back as quickly as possible. To my surprise, it actually was possible. Shame he was in the wrong position, but luckily I did manage to repeat it, and even though he was kinda close to death anyway, so this was unnecessary, we managed to get the topple with our low damage weapon and he falls off and dies. I feel like I've achieved something here, always working towards those golems. We then fly, walk, jump, run, Ian, and bait until we make it to Smough and Steen. Compared to what we were just seeing against Iron Golem, the damage against Smough is actually pretty damn good. Plus he bleeds pretty easily, so we can easily drain the health off this Smough stuffed turkey. But then we hit Super Ornstein and we go back to the kind of damage I was expecting. Saying that, in some ways Super Ornstein is easier than Super Smough. Firstly, if you stay at his legs, there's only 3 moves he can do, all of which can be avoided pretty easily, especially as the shockwave from the butt slam has a much smaller range than when Super Smough does it. You can still get caught by his attacks if you're not careful, but thanks to some frequent slashes, bleed, and good dodges, we end this fight and move yonder. Guinevere's bowl acquired, and I actually get hold of another gauntlet weapon by using the Iron Golem soul to make a case deuce into the Dragon Bone Fist. So full disclosure here, I intended to use this weapon a lot more in the run, but I foolishly assumed it was upgraded with Demon Titanite before realizing it actually needs Dragon Scales, which I absolutely was not missioning down to Ash Lake to grab, so that kind of killed my interest in using it. I also for the first time here decided to test out the Case Deuce parry, and it feels pretty good. Despite actually still having the Dark Moon Seance ring from the last cycle, I committed to the bit and used my throwing knife-shaped gauntlet weapon to kill Guinevere. Gwyndolin was not very impressed by this. He thought his magic would spell my defeat, but after a lot of running, I clawed up to him and slashed him to death quickly. We also made very quick work of Slashbreed Priscilla as we painted this world with her blood. I'm probably going to hell for that, but I doubt you expected anything less at this point. Right, well I think for this second part of this cycle, it makes sense to get the claw upgraded as much as we can. So I run down to New Londo, get the key and drain the water as per usual and get the very large Andre. We do lack some Titanite chunks though, but thankfully we can farm some. Can we just talk about how OP parrying and backstabbing is in this game? I mean, okay, parrying does require some skill to do it consistently, but backstabbing is crazy. Any backstabbable enemy can just be chain backstabbed just by walking into the right spot. Not that I'm complaining anyway, we get the claw up to plus 15. I want to get the Four Kings out of the way, as I know it's gonna kinda suck, so I run back to Undead Burg and grab the gold pine resin here. I head down to Dark Root for Sif, but of course stop by to say hi and bye to this winged fly. Our claws cut through it like a knife through butterfly, although it does take 3 cycles to kill. But totally worth it to get that Divine Andre at the top of the tower. Of course, we handle Sif as well while we're in the area. This is a lot more fun than the Moonlight Butterfly, a showdown in close quarters. The bleed is really invaluable here, helping to chunk down Sif's health bar after every few slashes. We still have to see the limping though, as we can't take it down that quickly, but thankfully it's short-lived as we finish them off again. I also grabbed the Hornet Ring this time, as that's going to come in useful later. But first, let's level Dex a bit more and get this slog of a fight out the way. The Four Kings can't be bled, so unfortunately that's not an option here. I used the gold pine resin I picked up earlier for this one, just to try and boost our damage a bit more. This honestly wasn't as bad as I was thinking. Even though our damage is not the best obviously, the speed of our attacks does compensate to a degree. We still get stung by explosions and grabs, so there's no chance we kill one king before another spawns. But thanks to some choice healing times and a couple of actually good fat roll dodges from me, we managed to chunk down the final one, turning the Four Kings into the Claw Kings. We once again absolutely blanked Framp, so Karth is here to help us ride the throat boats to the Firelink altar. We place the soup bowl to simmer, and then head to fight this smooth brain lizard. Then again, maybe I'm the smooth brain, as I could not seem to hit the last head for the life of me. You know, I'm actually down to see an improved version of fighting a Hydra in one of the future games. This has potential to be a cool encounter, but this one is just ruined by the jankiness and the clipping into the wall. Anyway, it's dead now. So the reason I did the Hydra here is because I actually want to do the DLC early on this run. We kill the gold golem and the blue golem in the Duke's archives for the broken pendant, thus fulfilling all the requirements to enter the DLC. With our speedy claw, Ian the Sanctuary Guard went a lot smoother than last time. Ignore that. Ignore that also. Quick, fast forward to the part where I slash him. Phew, there we go. Nearly looked bad in front of the audience there. Damage is good, bleed is good, Ian is not so good and had to be taken to the hospital after we filmed this scene. He found the jokes a bit mantic-corny. Compared to Ian, I was a bit worried about Artorias. First, he can't be bled and he has pretty good defenses, meaning that we're stuck with low damage. Second, I was concerned the claw would not be able to knock him out of the buff animation. Now it turns out that it can, but we need to hit him 5 times to do it, which there is just barely enough time to do. I spent most of the fight just strafing, dodging, and taking pot shots, but the intensity suddenly ramped up 7 minutes into the attempt, where he threw me off by starting to buff without doing the usual back roll that precedes it, and unfortunately, I was not able to get to him in time, getting blasted by the AoE and left on low health. I also had no Estus left at this point, so I had to pop a humanity to heal. This was probably one of the luckiest things that happened to me on the whole run, as he decided to do his spin attack while out of reach of me, leaving me time to munch the humanity and heal. If he had done almost any other attack, I would have died. But disaster struck again a few seconds later as I mistimed a dodge, getting caught by a horizontal swing and making the foolish mistake of thinking there was time to attack. I got hit by his overhead swing. I had a fraction of health remaining somehow. Thankfully, he then did the jump, again one of the few attacks with a window big enough for me to heal again. His buff finally wore off a few seconds later, leaving me in a better position at last. The final few moments were an intense back and forth as I slowly chipped away at our glorious health with our Tor until he finally fell. That was a sweaty one. As we proceed for our usual super fun time in Ulasil Township, guess what I found? Another Vagrant. Seeing 2 in 1 run is really something. Sadly, it only dropped to humanity, but at least I got to kill it this time. After taking on Manus first last time, I opted to Kalameeting with the resident Zekrom in the area using Pokemon Goth. Even by my standards, that was pretty terrible. Half the people watching aren't going to get that. So, all important question here. With our much faster bleed weapon, can Kalameet be bled this time? Actually, yes. So it still requires a lot of hits in a row. I found the best window is when he stands up on his hind legs to shoot fire, start slashing at the base of his tail, but then move to the right to slash his legs as he sits down and his tail moves out of reach. With this, I was actually able to land enough slashes in quick succession to get a bleed early in the fight. Sadly, I didn't manage to repeat this until right near the end, but regardless, it still helped to speed things along as we slashed down and defeated the Black Dragon once again. With that done, it was time to take on Manus in hand-to-hand combat. Unlike Kalameet, he can't be bled at all, but his damage resistances are a little less, so that's something. I actually managed to survive the multi-hit combo, which was pretty shocking. I guess that health investment really did come in handy. It was a battle of survival more than anything else, honestly. The fight went on for about 10 minutes, and annoyingly sometimes our slashes actually missed because of our short range and the awkward position of his legs. I actually switched to some heavy attacks towards the end just to try and speed things up a little. Eventually Manus gets smoked. We should change his name to Father of the Cannabis. Also, can you believe Dusk doesn't die in one claw swipe? NG plus power creep is real. DLC is done though, and now let's just clear up the scrubs left in the base game. I opted to use Gold Pine Resin for Scale the Seathless, not because he was particularly worrying, more so I just wanted to bring him down quickly with a Seathless Assault. This reduced the fight to about 90 seconds and another Lord Soul is ours. For our next little expedition, I made the Caestus Divine and upgraded it to +5. What's the betting? The damage is gonna suck. But at least we need not worry about that just yet. Pinwheel is blocking our way. Let's be real, he didn't have a necro chance in hell here. Our Pinsir movement with our claws pulls out the victory. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm wearing the Dragon Bone Fist on my left hand, I've got no idea to be honest. I think I was drunk at this point. Anyway, let's just prepare for the Nito. What the hell, man? Don't interrupt me when I'm resting. So, as to be expected, the damage against the skeletons with the Divine Caestus was trash, but it at least attacks a lot faster than the shield did and staggers the skeletons with each hit, so it was totally possible to take them out now. Because I was determined to use the Dragon Bone Fist for at least a little of the run, I stuck it on and gave Nito a few bone uppercuts for a bit of bone-on-bone action, but yeah, obviously it's not upgraded enough for the damage to be anywhere near worth the time spent. We roll up Nito into a Defeato Burrito and claim another Lord Soul. Strength and Dex are now both at 40 in case you were curious what our stats are. As we already killed Cece, we can comfortably head down into the Demon Ruins and take out this Centipede. Not to be confused with Centipede Demon, of course. That comes later. Let's get this cycle finished up anyway, rapid fire style. First, we execute a Kirk Hammer on this invader. We offer some sage advice to this demon. Wear some bleed resistance armor, Jesus man. Centipede Demon bugs out as we cut the legs right out from under him. And Bed of Chaos sweeps me into a pit of despair by finding a new way to give me a frustrating death, even after all these years. Goddamn stupid boss! Time to take out our anger by continuing the tradition of this run. So we take a quick D-Taurus, and with a flaming claw, Taurus Demon gets absolutely shredded. So onwards to Kiln of the First Flame, and you know the Caestus can parry, right? So yeah, easy vic. You don't avoid the parry. Die! We take his throne and let him know that Gwynter is coming by taking the dark ending this time round. So at last, Cycle 3 whips only. We start off with just our basic whip. Personally, I think this is the worst of the 3 weapon types we're using here for a few reasons we'll get into. So first, the positives. Damage is actually a bit better starting out than the previous 2 cycles, so that's something at least, and the range is clearly better than either of the previous 2 weapons. We give the Asylum Demon a double serving of Cool Whip, which doesn't react well with his sensitive tummy, and he dies shortly after. I'll get on to the drawbacks of this weapon shortly. Oscar gets a whippity whippet, and we touch down in Firelink and run to Andre to get this thing upgraded to +5, unlocking the bridge shortcut and buying the boxes we need for upgrading at the bonfire. So downsides of the whip compared to the other 2 weapons? Well, we can't get a bleed variant of this weapon until much later in the game for one compared to the other 2, so although the damage seems decent now, it will drop off as we go forward more so than the other 2 weapon types. But we're going to prepare for that a little by letting Griggs out. We grab his gear in the nearby barrel, and then run all the way back to Firelink and buy Magic Weapon. With the staff in the other hand, we now have 5 buffs we can use to hopefully boost our damage some, although we will need to put some more points into intelligence, as I bet the initial buff isn't going to be great. Let's find out as we take on the Capra demon. I'm going to stone armor up for this one. So more downsides to the whip. Well as slower attacks, we can't riposte and plunge attack, which to be fair we couldn't do with the shield either, but at least with that we could block to mitigate damage. Anyway, I thankfully managed to dispatch the dogs and then decide to go naked for the rest of the fight. With magic weapon buffing our whip, we get a grand total of 74 damage. With charcoal pine resin, it's 67, so 7 points less. If you're wondering about no buffs, it's 57, so magic weapon gets us 17 whole points more damage. Wow. It's practically beating the fight for me. I mean, this fight was fine, but way more time consuming than it should have been really. I think this is going to get worse before it gets better though. So it's a mad dash to get the large Andre, and then I take the shortcut back out of the depths. I wanted to get to Anor Londo ASAP now to get a better whip, so took the Drake's route to Blighttown, getting some large Titanite that somebody left lying around. Ready for another long fight? Just look at that damage against Quelaag. While fighting her here, I spied her charging up the explosion attack. I thought I was at a safe distance, but apparently not. It's also now a one-shot, so that's cool. Fantastic. By this point in New Game ++, she has a lot of health, and I was now terrified of getting caught by the explosion as that attempt I just died in had been going on for 9 minutes when that happened. I was hyper aware of it, more so than any other attack. I tried the R2 to see if it would help much, but it's so much slower than the light attacks it didn't seem worth it. After about 11 minutes of whipping, running, and whipping some more, we give this spider a case of Quelagoraphobia and she never leaves her nest again. We ring the second bell first this time, and then we ride the Express Highway to the asylum. Compared to the other two runs, I'm actually not going to fight the stray demon yet, because without bleed it will be pretty damn tedious, so I just grab the doll and get out of there. I want to get my sweet fat ring back, so I free Lautrec to get him back to Firelink and then whip him with my leg to push him off one final time. With that done, I buff my whip and prepare for the Gargoyles. Damage here is way better than with the claw run, except that we have no bleed, but we can stagger and even tail cut the first gargoyle, which is, as they say in Italy, bellissimo. Even when the second one gets involved, this felt a lot less chaotic than last time, and I leave the first gargoyle's ears ringing when I whip him in the side of the head. As usual, once one is down, I clown the second, even using the heavy attack for extra hilarity. The first bell is rung second and Sen's awaits. Since I guess I've committed to this whole magic weapon malarkey, I free Logan this time for an upgraded version of magic weapon later. We also buy some large crests from the Titanite Fallen Merchant and head back down to our blacksmith Broseph for the upgrades. After reaching the top and sharing a sensual moment with this giant that may or may not get me demonetized, it was time for the Iron Golem. I'm not gonna lie, I was expecting a little bit more damage than that with magic weapon, given the golem's supposedly weak to magic. This only gives us 11 points of extra damage, but then again int is still low, so what you gonna do? But I knew that if we could topple him with the claw, we could most certainly topple him with the whip, given it was doing nearly 3 times the damage, and we once again used the environment to kill him. These imps impressed me with their strength as they carried me up to Anor Londo. We made it at last. I of course crossed the rafters here on my first attempt with 0 deaths or accidental falls, and then grab great magic weapon from the fallen chandelier before we head to the painted world. We actually need to do this NPC invasion here with King Jeremiah. It's a whip versus whip battle. Oh, and his pyromancy, but we don't talk about that. Upon defeat, he drops the Notch Whip, which is the designated bleed variant for the whip weapon class. Thankfully I had some Titanite shards I had bought earlier and upgraded it to +5 at the bonfire. +5 is still a bit low to be honest, so we need to get back to Andre, meaning that Priscilla has to die. Okay, I mean she actually doesn't have to die, but we're going to do it anyway. I messed about here to unnecessarily cut her tail just to see if I could. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have wasted time doing that as it let her become invisible again and prolong the fight, but a few more whips and her fate was pre-sealed. Time to drop back down to Earth and make the long journey back to Andre. We get our whip up to +10, but given that it's New Game ++, I'm still not quite satisfied. So, strap in. Here we go. And there we go, a plus 15 notch whip already. Now we're ready to blast through the rest of the run. This time, I did remember that I had the Dark Moon Seance ring, so it felt like it made sense to do Gwendolyn now. Our damage is good of course, and our notched whip allows us to render him asunder. We didn't get bleed because it's probably not possible to whip him enough in quick succession, but like it really matters. Now, on the way to Ornstein and Smough, something kind of weird happened. Did you see that? Watch again. Why did I lose health there? Anyone know? Let me know in the comments because I'm totally baffled. I asked this Silver Knight, but he was so confused he fell off the edge. So, Biggie Smalls and Smally Bigs are up next. How best to execute our strategy so this doesn't drag on? Well, I opted for Ornstein first this time. The stagger you can get with the whip is kinda underrated, and we get nearly 200 damage a swing with Great Magic Weapon applied. My logic is that Smough can be bled more easily, so phase 2 with him will go smoother. Phase 1 definitely took a bit longer, especially when Ornstein dances out of the way of some of our whip swings, but once our run and whip strategy brings him down, let's have a look at the damage to Smough. 444 from one swing. Damn, whips are actually OP apparently. With bleed as well, we eat through Smough's health bar pretty quickly. A few more whips right into his crotch in the final moments of the fight, and the victory is ours. With the Lord Vessel gained, let's get the lava drained. You know what? Let's take down this guy the non-cheese way for once. So as I said, we take him down the cheese way as per usual. At least this bug here will go down nice and easy. Well, the worm has turned it seems. This place is just determined to clown me now, but okay, it's dead. Let's go and... God damn it. I don't even want to go to Lost Izalith, but you're making me work for it, game. So after that little saga, the fire stage gets made to bleed in a brutal demonstration of how even in New Game++, this status effect just wrecks him. Now we need to whip Centipede. I actually went to the effort of cutting off both its arm and its tail for extra funnies. Otherwise, we just dodge the attacks that he telegraphs and then respond with some speedy whipping to bring it down. The only other thing of note here was that I actually did kill the Pyro Witch outside Bed of Chaos' boss door for once. Took very few hits surprisingly. I actually then nearly traded with Bed of Chaos as it shot up its fire pillars and I delivered a good whipping but thankfully survived and left this little creature completely bed-draggled. I will say the whip was also pretty useful for the Hydra, given that we had better reach and we could more easily hit that one pesky head. To be fair, this dragon was pretty tired anyway by this point, he had eaten far too many carbohydrates. With the relevant golems cracked into 1,000 pieces, and this dragon rejecting my request for a Seath Fire, we grab the giant cell key in the Duke's archives. This allows us to free large headpiece Hugh Jackman, and subsequently purchase Crystal Magic Weapon. Obviously, this is absolutely useless against Seath though, being that he is a magic crystal dragon himself. No, Gold Pine Resin is our buff of choice here. He has a lot of health now, so even though our damage seems alright, it takes longer than you might think until he becomes deceased. Time to finish off clearing the base game. Charcoal Pine Resin turns this bug into the Moonlight Butter Fry. We whip this wolf until we can classify it as expired. Intelligence gets pushed to 25, 24 points higher than my IRL intelligence. And the Four Kings brings us right down to earth with a fight that leaves me sliced up, like I'm in a bistro. Even with the boost from the Crystal Magic Weapon, I just could not kill that first king before the second spawns, even with good RNG where it didn't use the explosion or the grab. Oh well. But check this, I actually dodged the grab of the second one while fat rolling. That's a legit first for me. Of course, the third king caught me with it right away, but still small victories. The third one did indeed decide to spam the explosion because of course we can't have nice things. But thankfully, I managed to land some finishing whips and just barely tanked through with no Estus remaining. As I prepared for Nito by getting a Divine Whip, I remembered that I actually had completely missed the Gaping Dragon. So we whip up Channelitatum with our Magic Mike and deal one of the highest damage numbers of the whole run against the Gaping Dragon's head. I also used the Overhead Heavy to cut the tail just because. You know what this dragon's favourite fruit is? Gape fruit. Okay, he's done. So, Pinwheel. Our Divine Whip against Nito's skeletons did the most damage of any of our Divine Weapons on this run. 41 whole points? Jesus, need to tone it down, man. Those numbers are way too high. Nito, as usual, lets off his loud bass because he's a supporter of grave culture, but it doesn't really help as we bring him down shortly after. Lord Souls are done, so let's finish off the DLC for the last time. Ian the Sanctuary Guard is the only boss in the DLC who doesn't have mega magic resistance, so as such, our damage was quite nice here. Despite the fact that it was unnecessary, I knew that there was no choice but to cut Ian's tail, as it yields his tail weapon, which is a whip. A whip I do not intend to use because it deals poison that almost every other remaining boss is immune to, as well as way worse damage. A few more whips takes down Ian. As for Artorias, the damage was actually not as bad as I was expecting. Staggering him out of the buff animation is easier than the claw, as it takes just 3 hits this time, which is helpful. Artorias was on point here though. The previous losses to me seem to have really ignited his passion for battle. He can roll out of the way of some of our swings, but we managed to land enough to bring him down without too much issue. The home stretch is here. I beat up that mimic on the way down to the abyss, and then prepared to whip the hand that feeds. Because of the range, we could hit him from slightly farther away. Not much, but it's still something. I didn't even bother with Crystal Magic Weapon here because the damage buff was so minimal it just wasn't worth it. Again, the claw run was probably worse honestly, damage is definitely a bit higher here. I did brick it at the end with him 1 hit from death. I got too greedy and couldn't get away from the multi-hit combo in time. I survived with a small chunk of health and luckily was able to recover and finish him off shortly after. Dusk gets whipped into shape and we prepare for the final DLC boss. Let's do this. Okay, well, you know what time it is. This is just bullying at this point. Gwyn is here at last. But guess what? You can use whips to parry. This guy gwinced as soon as he saw that. Even without riposting, this is no issue. And that's it. The run is complete. This was fun to try out these weapon types. Are they the best? No, probably not. But honestly, they can reach higher levels of viability than you might think. Give them a try sometime if you fancy a different but interesting experience. Thanks for watching. I hope you had a good time too. It's been fun to hang out. Until next time, I've been JK Leeds. Have a good one, and see ya. Thanks again to Game of Thrones Legends for sponsoring this video. Download it by clicking the link in the description or scan the QR code and get 50 gold, 3000 food, and a daily summon token.